What's going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to discuss the new film Alita: Battle Angel. The movie is based upon the classic manga series created by Yukito Kishiro back in 1990. It was also adapted into animation in 1993. This screenplay adaptation was written by James Cameron and Alita Kalogridis. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. And we have Robert Rodriguez in the director's chair. So I'm just going to come right out and say it, but I had a fucking blast watching this movie. Admittedly, the dialogue can be very clunky, the characters can be quite thin, and the screenplay is a little messy, frequently making these giant narrative leaps that are awfully convenient. However, none of that matters at all with this movie. What this movie promised, it 100% delivers, and what this movie specifically offers as its feature attraction is some of the most beautifully destructive battle scenes between cyborgs that the human mind can imagine. Equal parts elegant and savage, I seriously doubt any big-budget sci-fi or superhero movie this year will be able to top the exquisite carnage that this movie puts on display. For that alone, director Robert Rodriguez should take a bow, and I'm crossing my fingers that he and James Cameron will continue to work together in the future. Because while I never in a million years would have imagined that Cameron and Rodriguez would make great collaborators, they seem to bring out the best in each other. Apparently, we have Guillermo del Toro to thank for all this because it was he who first brought the comics to James Cameron's attention. James Cameron fell in love with the material years ago, but he kept waiting for filmmaking technology to reach a point where he could get the story right. I'm a blank slate on the comics, but last night I watched some of the anime from the 90s, and a lot of the scenes in the live-action movie were directly inspired by the anime, which can be both a good thing and a bad thing. For instance, when Alita is slashing someone in half from head to groin, the results are absolutely jaw-dropping. But when Christoph Waltz is trying to wield a giant hammer as a hunter-warrior, the results are less convincing. If you're a fan of the original manga, from what I understand, the movie pulls material from the first 4 books in the series. But what's fun about this new movie for newcomers is how it spoon-feeds you everything you need to know in order to have a good time. The film has this perfect setup where the central character has no memory of who she is, and so we come to understand this universe through her eyes and her experiences. The premise is relatively simple. The year is 2563, and the world is still recovering from this cataclysmic war known as the Fall, where much of Earth's old superior technology was lost forever. The wealthy live in a floating city above, while the rest of humanity fights for survival in the slums of Iron City below. And Iron City is a world full of violent crime, terrifying cyborgs, and the hope of one day joining the elite in the clouds above. While exploring a scrapyard below the floating city, Dr. Ito, played by Christoph Waltz, he stumbles upon the remains of a highly advanced cyborg, and when he realizes that her human mind is still alive, he decides to rebuild her using the body that was originally intended for his daughter, who is now dead. What sets Alita apart, however, from other cyborgs is her heart. Her heart is an advanced form of technology that has not been seen for centuries, and it contains enough power to provide energy to all of Iron City for several years. Initially, Alita is content just to be a surrogate daughter for Ito, but as she explores her new world and gets exposed to violence and confrontation, memories of her old life start to come back to her, a life when she was one of the most elite warriors the world had ever seen. Even without her memory, Alita's physical instincts are completely intact. The first time we see her in motion, she's saving a dog's life, and I can only describe her grace and athleticism as exhilarating to watch. She's incredibly strong, but her body's quite heavy due to the fact that she has a cybernetic body. But the way she moves, it's almost like she's the most lithe and dexterous and agile ballerina imaginable. She has this move toward the end of the movie where she goes up a one fingertip while stretching her legs above her, and it's just absolutely jaw-dropping. So I just had the world's biggest smile on my face watching Alita rediscover all of her abilities, which includes a style of martial arts called Panzerkunst, which was a martial art used by cyborgs in these horrific wars between Mars and Earth centuries ago. Now, inevitably, there are going to be some people who find Alita's appearance to be a difficult hurdle to cross. Her eyes are enormous and very expressive, much like the drawings in the source material, but I found her appearance to be fascinating. Because of how her eyes are rendered, when Alita feels pain, loss, rage, she communicates so much more emotion, particularly in combat when she has her badass war paint under her eyes. Actress Rosa Salazar, she deserves a huge high five for doing such a brilliant job of imbuing Alita with so much soul and personality. Her voice work is absolutely incredible. But for fans of epic storytelling, whether it's mythology or fantasy or sci-fi, Alita experiences a true hero's journey throughout the story, and we watch as she evolves from an innocent, naive child to a rebellious teen, and then finally to an adult where she's just this complete, total, badass warrior woman seizing control of her own destiny. What's crucial about her journey is just how much she struggles before achieving the badass status that she ultimately attains. Unlike some other recent shows and movies where female heroines seem to moonwalk without the slightest difficulty into becoming the chosen one, Alita's final transformation only comes after quite literally being torn to pieces by her enemies and then continuing to fight all the same, even with 3 of her limbs missing. It's a miracle that this film is rated PG-13, and I can only assume that because the fights are between cyborgs rather than humans, that somehow they were able to sneak this film past the MPAA, but this movie definitely deserves a hard R in the best possible way. In any event, at the finale, we finally see Alita as the badass she was meant to be, in full control over a body and a sword that were state-of-the-art tech before the fall. stands for United Republic of Mars. I love how tech in this world is almost like Valyrian steel in Game of Thrones, in that the skill to create it has been lost forever. Personally, I'm eager to spend a lot more time in this world. The final shot leaves Alita in the perfect place to start a new series of adventures. If we are lucky enough for this franchise to continue, Hollywood desperately needs some new franchises, some new blood, some new ideas, and I'm crossing my fingers that this one works out. So we need to talk a little bit about the 3D in this film, because I've been very vocal about my opposition to 3D in the past, but last night, quite simply, I was in awe. It helped quite a bit that I was in what might be the best 3D screening room in Manhattan, but the visuals and the overall design in the 3D were absolutely stunning. The problem I often have with 3D is that the movies aren't shot in 3D. They're only converted to 3D after the fact, basically as an exhibition gimmick to gouge audiences for more money. In those cases, which is most of the time, the end result usually is a dim, blurry image and a thoroughly disappointing experience. But in the hands of James Cameron as a producer, the 3D was state-of-the-art and intensely satisfying. Better still, I noticed that the 3D glasses are an incredible deterrent for keeping people off their phones. You just can't be looking at your phone and the screen with the glasses on. It just creates an additional step. As a result, this was the first movie in months where I didn't have to have a confrontation with a fellow audience member about ruining the movie for others. I can't believe I've made it this far in the review without talking about character design. A lot of the characters, such as Groishka, are heavily inspired by the source material, but I was slack-jawed taking in the extraordinary variety of the various cyborgs in the film, from bounty hunters to assassins to celebrity athletes in the world of motorball. Rodriguez and Cameron just let their imaginations run wild, populating this world with characters of lethal elegance and horrific brutality. Best of all is how the choreography is perfectly staged to allow maximum appreciation of what is happening. The movements of the camera are as sophisticated as the action unfolding before our eyes, so even when a half-dozen crazy cyborgs are blasting around the motorball track trying to kill Alita, we can take in and savor each little detail. Action fans are going to lose their minds. Now that I've officially gone a little bit crazy about all the things I love about this movie, let's talk about what didn't work, because overall this is a very flawed film. I don't want to oversell it, but there's plenty about this movie that's going to be very easy to ridicule. I was just having so much fun with the ingredients that I like that I was willing to turn a blind eye to everything I disliked. I'm a massive fan of both Mahershala Ali as well as Jennifer Connelly, and while they get a lot of screen time in this movie, in the end their characters are a little thin, and the script simply doesn't give these dynamic actors a whole lot of material to work with. There are also plenty of scenes that are unintentionally humorous that snarky hipsters are going to have a field day with. Kean Johnson plays the love interest Hugo, and most of his scenes with Alita slip into this very melodramatic soap opera territory. The only thing that prevents these scenes from ruining the movie is Rosa Salazar's total sincerity and commitment to the material. That said, the final shot of Hugo, now a cyborg falling to his death, is completely ridiculous. Pretty much everything they got right with Alita in terms of her look and design, they managed to get wrong with Hugo. But who knows? Perhaps these flaws will become part of the charm of the movie and help it build a cult following that enjoys watching it on repeat. So I think that's about all I have to say about this movie. If what you saw in the trailer is appealing to you, you're going to dig the movie. The people in the crowd around me, I could tell, were completely fired up. But if what you saw in the trailer looked completely ridiculous, you're probably not the audience for this movie. It's very hard to think of any examples of Western filmmakers adapting manga or anime in a satisfying way. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a single example. But I feel like Rodriguez and Cameron did the best they possibly could to try to capture the spirit of what attracted them to the material in the first place. This is one of those movies where I'm going to buy the Blu-ray and watch the action scenes probably 100 times while ignoring the rest of the movie. So if that sounds like your thing, definitely go check it out this weekend. But I think that's all I have to say at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. Can't thank you enough for listening to my rant. If you want to talk about anime or manga or comics, sci-fi, whatever, James Cameron, etc., you can find me on Twitter at Colbrax, and there's a link in the description below. But if you enjoyed this review, you'd be doing me a huge favor if you would consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That's very, very helpful to me. But can't thank you enough for watching my video. As always, I really appreciate it. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.